Hi everyone, I'm Laura Karan, and for Module 14 on interacting disturbance regimes, I selected this article titled Interactions Among Spruce Beetle Disturbance, Climate Change, and Forest Dynamics Captured by a Forest Landscape Model that was published in 2015. I selected this article because of the bark beetle and spruce beetle outbreaks that are becoming a pandemic here in Colorado. Likewise, climate change and drought stresses are dynamically changing forest compositions of Colorado. More specifically, that was addressed in this study were the forests of northwest Colorado that are primarily composed of Engelmann spruce, Douglas fir, and ponderosa pine. In the face of bark beetle outbreaks, which are widely predicted to increase because of a warming climate due to climate change, few, if any, studies have explicitly evaluated climatically enhanced beetle population dynamics in relation to climate-driven changes in forest composition and structure that may alter forest suitability for beetle infestation. Beetle disturbance dynamics are similar among all beetle species. They are the greatest disturbance agent in conifer forests of the northern hemisphere and are led by the direct effects of climate and weather or precipitation variation. It is important in climate-driven shifts in forest disturbance dynamics to study the interactions and feedback mechanisms at play. The authors of this article that conducted this study predict that climate change will greatly impact forest dynamics, dominant tree species, and the seral stages that follow. Likewise, it will also alter beetle disturbances and has the potential to deplete susceptible hosts. It is important to evaluate the short-term, long-term, direct, and indirect effects. All of these have been documented individually, but have yet to be compiled in a way that models scenarios of interactive disturbances. They feel that modeling will provide underlying mechanisms and their relative importance. The methods and design of their study employed the use of a dynamic forest land management tool called LandClim for modeling. LandClim is a spatially explicit, stochastic landscape model that combines fine-grained forest dynamics with broad-scale bark beetle, fire, and wind disturbance to simulate a dynamic forest landscape in response to climate, topography, and soil properties. Beetle and fire disturbance regimes emerge from climate-forest interactions. The LandClim beetle model uses bioclimatic and forest stand structural variables to assess beetle population dynamics and forest susceptibility to bark beetle disturbance. These assessments are used to simulate the extent, occurrence, and severity of beetle-induced tree mortality. They developed model parameters from the existing data sources and evaluated and applied these to LandClim to create an output that uses three key scenarios based on altitudinal limits. Modeling is often complex and hard to understand, so I want to outline some of the modeling parameters they used in their LandClim assessment. They used 5 of the most common conifers in Colorado Rocky Mountains, which are the Engelmann spruce, subalpine fir, lodgepole pine, Douglas fir, and ponderosa pine. They also looked at the life history and tree species responses to environmental drivers, fire disturbance rotation frequencies, and stochastic wind disturbance rotation frequencies, the temperature-dependent beetle population development, beetle distance-dependent dispersal probabilities, and beetle population dynamics and pressure related to forest susceptibility. When using modeling in a study, it is important to understand that controversy can arise if sound science and repeatable studies are not employed. They went through and evaluated whether it was adequately representational, if it used enough sensitivity, and whether it adequately captured long-term forest disturbance interaction. In regards to its application for the future, they used 3 key projections of global circulation models: the CGC M31, CCS M3, and MIRO C32. The results of their study came to the conclusion that different scenarios on different timescales will produce different mortality rates and variability. In all 3 climate scenarios, in the long term, there was an overall decrease in beetle-induced mortality rates. Assessment of future bark beetle disturbance dynamics requires integration of at least 3 mechanisms by which climate change acts upon bark beetles. Changes in temperature directly affect beetle phenology and population development. Changes in drought affect the defense mechanisms of a host tree, and long-term changes in climate and disturbance regimes affect forest species composition and stand structure. They projected that an increase in Engelmann spruce mortality due to both drought and spruce beetle disturbance, which is likely to shift tree species dominance to more drought adapted Douglas fir and ponderosa pines. This decrease in host tree availability offsets the positive climate change effects on beetle population growth to the degree that beetle disturbance decreases in the long term at low elevations and also at higher elevations under more severe climate change scenarios. Further research is necessary to disentangle the complex interactions among drought stress, bark beetles, and other pathogens that ultimately cause tree mortality. Based on the article and my presentation, here are my discussion questions. Feel free to address one of them, a couple of them, or all of them. They are: what other variables could potentially impact bark beetle outbreaks and why, or did they miss any? What impacts could an upward shift of the tree line and or changes in the ecotone composition have, if any, on their study? Or have you ever done environmental modeling? If so, reflect on your experience compared to that of this study. Thank you guys for listening, and I look forward to your comments in the discussion.